one by one, I have a list like almost 30 exceptions, and we are going to discuss all of them, what they mean, and what to do. So the first one, element click interception exception. This happens when the element click command could not complete it because the element receiving the events obscures the element requested to be clicked. Something similar is the element not interactable exception, and it's thrown when an element is present in the DOM, but interactions with that element will hit another element due to paint order. And basically, this is like, let me show you really quick. For example, this can happen here. Imagine that you want to click this particular button, but you're trying to click it while there is a spinner, and we will receive one of these exceptions. One way to battle, exceptions in regular Java code is just to, use try catch, right? So here I am finding the update card button when we increase the quantity or whatever, just to update the prices. So we are wrapping the code that can throw an exception, and we can have these catch clauses to do something. Just really quick, the exception here, print stack trace. This will print the stack trace to the console, the name of the exception, and other useful descriptions. This is nice. If you just use toString, it returns the text message describing the exception name and description, and getMessage will just display the description of the exception. Anyhow, as we'll talk in a minute, we'll use fluent weights to battle these problems. Similar exception, element not selectable exception. This is thrown when trying to select an unselectable element. This exception comes under invalid element state exception, and element not selectable exception indicates that the web element is present in the web page, but it cannot be selected. Basically, let me show you, I think, one of our last pages here, the checkout. For example, imagine that we have some of these checkboxes, but if for some reason we cannot select it, then probably you will receive this error. So for both of these cases, we can use, in order to battle this and this, we can use WebDriver wait. We initialize the buff here, somewhere here, WebDriver wait equals to new WebDriver, and we need to provide the driver and the duration in seconds, which is the timeout. And in some cases, you may change the pooling interval, which is the seconds responsible for. Basically, you will wait between each retry. That's all. So here, this expected conditions class, it provides you this, functions that you can use directly here, and we will wait for 30 seconds until particular element is clickable, and then we will click it here or select it. That's all. And this is how we can battle that. So exception number 4, element not visible exception. This is thrown when element is present on the DOM, but it's not visible and cannot be interacted with. For example, on our page, one step back, if we go, to the card, sometimes when you apply a coupon, here is a div, and sometimes this might be like hidden buttons or whatever. And of course, they're on the page, but they're hidden with JavaScript to CSS. And if you try to click them, then this will fail until you do something else to show them up. So the thing that you can do, again, is you can use WebDriver await. In this case, from the expected conditions, we can use visibility of element located and provide by locator. This will wait for the particular element to appear, and this is pretty useful. For example, imagine that we are, and this happens actually here. If we apply the coupon, happy birthday, it takes some time until this message is displayed, right? And you need to wait for it. Otherwise, Selenium will try immediately to do something if you haven't set any implicit waits. So it's good to use the fluent waits instead. Exception number 5, insecure certification exception. Basically, if you, for example, this happens when there is a navigation by the client to hit a certification warning, usually resulting from an expired or invalid TOS certificate. There are a couple of ways. If you watch my Selenium 4 course, when we talked about Selenium 4 CDP integration, you can use CDP to battle that. Basically, of course, this works only for Chrome and Edge, which both share Chromium engine. So first, we get the DevTools driver, which is an interface which these both drivers implement. Then we get the DevTools, we create a session, and then there is a command which is set ignore certificate errors to true. And basically, we'll ignore this way their certificate errors. This many often occurs on test environments. And of course, it's really important for your production environment, everything there to be like HTTPS and follow all the security practices, but many often for QA environments, whatever, this happens, and it's fine to turn them off, I guess. If you don't use DevTools, of course, you can, for example, for Firefox, you can do that via, first you need to create Firefox options, then you need to create additional Firefox profile. Then for the Firefox profile, you can use the setter, accept untrusted certificates, and set it to true. This, again, will do the same thing. Basically, it will ignore all of these certificate errors. And then for the Firefox options, you need to set the profile to the profile that you already created. Something similar you can do with Chrome options, but here you don't need a profile. You directly here in the option set similar setter. That's all. Now, exception number 6, unable to set cookie exception. This is thrown when the driver fails to set a cookie. Something similar, it's the next one, invalid cookie domain exception. This is thrown when adding a cookie under a different domain than the current URL. Let me show you. I'll use the same example for both. So here I'm using cookie in their builder. Basically here I provide the name of the cookie and the value, and then because it's following the builder design pattern, and this is called fluent builder because this sometimes is called chaining methods, similar to actions class, but basically after that you have all these methods, and after that you have same. This is the implementation of this pattern, and then at the end, in order to build everything that it's chained together, we need to call the build methods. But basically all of this is just to initialize a cookie. You can do the same with just calling the some of the constructors, the overloaded constructors. So if, for example, if you're on our demo website, which is demos.beotrix.solutions, and if you try to set another domain, then you will receive this exception. So you need to be careful. And of course, if you watch some of the previous videos about handling cookies and how to optimize the tests. We add basically new cookie via manage add cookie, right? Now, exception number 8, invalid coordinates exception. Basically, the coordinates provided to an interaction operation are invalid for some reason. As with other exceptions, basically here a way to battle that is, of course, to be careful about the coordinates and just to be sure, especially when you are running your tests cross browser and on different resolutions, to be sure that you are calculating the coordinates correctly, and then be sure to call to maximize the window, right? Otherwise, there might be problems, especially with coordinates, because sometimes some of the drivers, depending on the resolutions, are starting the browser a little bit smaller than the maximum size. All right, exception number 9, invalid element state exception. This is thrown when a command cannot be completed because the element is invalid. 10, invalid session ID exception. This occurs when given session ID is not in the list of active sessions, meaning the session is either does not exist or is not active. In my personal experience, this happens many often when you have these complex frameworks, and for some reason, especially when you work in grid environment, for some reason you haven't closed properly the session, meaning that you haven't called driver quit or dispose, or for some reason you stop debugging, and then there are parallel processes that access the same session, and you need to be careful, right? You need always to be sure to call dispose and quit. Now, invalid switch to target exception. This is thrown when frame or window target to be switched doesn't exist, and basically there are two methods that can help you battle that. For frames, because this is like a page inside a page, you can basically you have this frame to be available and switch to it directly. Switch to it. You can provide how you find the frame. Usually this is by name or ID. This is perfect. I use it many often. And then for Windows, it's a little bit trickier, but you have this, for example, if you expect a new tab or window to be open, you can wait for number of windows to be something. This is this will solve your exception. Then JavaScript exception. From the name, you understand that this is an error occurred while executing JavaScript supplied by you. And just like a rule of thumb, always first execute your JavaScript snippets inside the DevTools. What I mean here is open with F12 the console, and then here, for example, this jQuery active, we use it many often for wait for inside as you will see in a minute, inside the front wait, we execute many times this snippet through JavaScript executor, and we wait for this. Basically, this means that there are no active underlying HTTP requests doing by asynchronous JavaScript. So no matter what is the script that you want to execute, just make sure to first execute it inside the console to be sure that there are no like typos or whatever. Now, the next one, move to target out of bound exception. This is thrown when the target provided to the action, for example, move method is invalid. For example, this snippet here. Something similar, we already discussed it. Just be sure to calculate the coordinates right, and then to maximize the browser. The next one, no aware present exception. This is thrown when switching to not presented a word, and this will be thrown basically if this code here we execute the following code, and if you go at the time when you go accept of the award interface, then this will be thrown if this award is not present. And a way to handle that is again via fluent wait. There is expected conditions, award is present. That's all. You need to wait for it because sometimes it takes time the award to be shown. No such attribute exception. This is thrown when the attributes of the element could not be found. And like there, for example, if you execute the following snippet here and there isn't such an attribute, then you will receive an error. So again, you can use fluent wait. The first method that you can use is called attribute to be, and it accepts like the bilocator of the element, and then what is the attribute name and what should be the value. Another, and there are like a couple of other similar methods that you can use. Like 1/volt of attribute to be is just not to like directly to pass the element that you already found. Another is just to check that the attribute is not empty. You don't care about the actual value. And then there is also not directly to check it by equal, but just by contents, and we just check part of the whether part of the value is contained. This is especially useful when you know, some of the cookies values are auto-generated with numbers, and then we can get only the stable part. And from the next one, from the name, you, I guess, understand what is it. When there isn't a cookie matching the given path name, you receive this error. There isn't directly a fluent wait for that, but you can write one yourself. Basically, we'll wait until basically this isn't known, and we'll wait for 30 seconds about that. So, but be careful, probably here when you probably you'll have to refresh your page. Otherwise, you won't see the cookie. Exception number 17, no such element exception. This is thrown when element could not be found, and this exception says that a web element is no longer present in the web page, and this is commonly seen exception class. Basically, it's a subclass of the not found exception. To avoid this, we should check the locator used, because the locator is likely incorrect. Not about this. I started talking about invalid selector exception. Yeah, basically, I group them because they are similar, but when you receive invalid selector exception, again, this is subclass of no such element exception, and it happens when there is like the locator is, the selector is incorrect or syntactically invalid. This happens many often when you use CSS selectors or XPath, because it's easy to write them wrong. For example, if you have this thing here, there is a mistake at the beginning. Make sure that you always copy the locator and check it here in the DOM. When you expect the elements, you can type Control F, and here you can provide the selector and see whether it works or not. Make sure to check that. Exception number 19, no such frame exception. This is thrown when frame target to be switched doesn't exist. This is like a specific error. I already showed you what we can do about it. Basically, you can go font weight with frame to be available and switch to it. That's all. Similar exception that we before covered is no such window exception, and this is thrown when window target to be switched doesn't exist. This is again a subclass of not found exception, and we would use window handles to get the set of active windows and then perform actions on the same. How you can do that? Basically here, again, we can use this number of windows to be, and then this get window handles. This basically give you the active windows, and then you can switch to them. That's all. The next one, a remote driver server exception. This is remote server related exception. If you use the new Selenium grids, there are options, like really advanced options to troubleshoot it. Check out the documentation. If you use Lambda test, of course, write to the support. Session not created exception. This happens basically when a new session cannot be created. Not interesting. Again, this happens many often when you have this framework and when you have this parallel processes. Sometimes there are problems and you need to be careful. The next one is really important. Stale element reference exception. This is, many of them can see it. This is thrown when a reference to an element is now stale. What this means that the web element was created on one page, but your code navigated to another page and the DOM has refreshed, or a frame or window switch or something similar. This error is not the same as element not visible exception. Be careful. Stale element reference exception is thrown when an object for a particular web element, again, was created in the program without any problem, but again, it's not present in the current window. And so what you can do is, again, wait for elements to be visible on the page. This is one way. Another way is to wait for, we already discussed this in the last video about waits. If you haven't watched it, check it out. But we can wait for all AJAX requests to finish. Of course, here I use jQuery. You need to be sure that jQuery is using your web page. If you use something else like Angular, there are other scripts. But yeah, basically here we're waiting with JavaScript all the requests to finish. Yeah, but basically make sure to use visibility of elements, the font weight. Then the timeout exception. This is thrown when a command does not complete in the specified time. This exception occurs when the completion takes more than the wait time, and most of the waits we use them to avoid the exception element not visible exception, right? So sometimes web page might not load completely before next command in the program. If WebDriver tries to find an element in the web page before the page completely loads, then this element not visible exception is thrown. And in order to avoid this, we can use two things. The first one is to set implicit wait. Again, I encourage you not to mix implicit waits with font waits, so use one of the both. And then you can always wait for, basically, this will return only when the page was loaded completely. This is another script that you can use. Then one of the last exceptions that we'll talk about is unexpected award present exception. This is thrown when an unexpected award has appeared. Maybe this is a bug, so you need to check that. This is not really a problem of your tests. Maybe it's a bug. Then this general WebDriver exception. Basically, this happens when WebDriver is when you try to use the driver instance immediately after closing the browser. Of course, you basically here you need to make sure always to close the driver after the test, probably in some kind of a teardown or test cleanup logic. And then the last one, no such session exception. This exception is thrown when a method is called after quitting the browser by WebDriver quit. And this can also happen due to web browser issues like crashes, and WebDriver cannot execute any command. My tip for you is always to choose the latest stable version of browsers to run Selenium WebDriver test cases. So make sure to update the browser and then use the latest version of WebDriver Manager here. This dependency, WebDriver Manager. Make sure to use the latest version. I use it here during the one-time setup to download the correct driver. This is what I'm doing. Yeah, so I wanted to show you, before wrapping up, I wanted to show you two things. The first one is that when you receive an exception, it's really good to format it really well. You need to be careful here. If you just go throw, probably this will, if you, for example, here throw a new exception and don't provide the original one, this will reset your stack trace. So you need to be careful not to lose, some system information, especially for debugging purposes. Then I wanted to, as I said, if we return to the presentation, I wanted to have this type of my own exception that it's pretty well formatted. We have these spaces and it's making a little bit more readable what happened. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And also, especially if the driver is still available and you haven't closed it, then we can print next to it on which URL the test failed. This can be really useful when debugging tests. Let's see how we can do that. So I created here under exceptions package a new custom exception that basically extends the exceptions class. Then I have two constructors, three. One of them actually accepts error message. Then we have the error message in the inner exception. And as you can see in the super constructor, we are calling always this one and then this one. I have a static method for two static methods for formatting the exception. Here I'm using a string builder to add these new lines with this /n. And then I wanted to show you 3 ways how we can append this symbol 40 times. Why is that? Again, just to add these breaks. The simplest way is just to write 4. Then you can, or second option is to create a character array of 40 symbols and then to add the symbol here. Another way is if you install this dependency commands lang3 of Apache. I added that at the top somewhere. Yeah, basically this is additional package here that we need for that. But again, it's a free library. Then it will give you this string utils repeat, and we can repeat that 40 times, and then we can append again new lines, the exception, again this line here of this symbol, 40 symbols, then new line, and then we return the exception. And I use that directly here in the super constructor, which again will format properly the exception message. And we do that again if you call this constructor with the URL. Basically, we're doing the same thing, but again, by the way, here I use Guava, which is a nice package from Google that gives you many utilities. They have something similar, string.repeat, which will do the same thing. I just wanted to show you the 4 different ways how you can do that. And then at the end, I'm appending the current URL so that you can see that. Why I have 2 versions of this, because again, you can optimize the code not to, copy paste it. This is fine. For simplicity, I haven't done that. But yeah, basically here, sometimes, especially when you already closed the browser and, for example, you receive the WebDriver exception, then it doesn't make sense. You won't have the URL because the browser is already closed. And then you won't have that. And this is why we have 2 versions.